This is the Maine Report, a public affairs program produced by the New England School of Communications.
Welcome to the Maine Report, a public affairs program produced by the students and faculty of the New England School of Communications. You can watch our program live online at NESCOM.tv, catch it in rebroadcast on cable channel 5 on Hudson University campus, and view the recorded version at NESCOM.tv. Today we're going to be talking about a fairly new program that's called Welcome to Housing. Welcome to Housing has been working with many major businesses to get donations to give to people who are at one point homeless and have worked with case managers to find a place to live but have no possessions. Welcome to Housing helps people start back their lives with everyday items that most people take for granted. Welcome to Housing focuses on helping people transition from living in area shelter programs to independent living. Although this program is new, it already has an overwhelming amount of support from the community. Welcome to Housing receives lots of donations and has many people who volunteer. Greek organizations at Hudson University and University of Maine spend time helping organize donations or just organize the warehouse. Donations vary from can openers and kitchen utensils to mattresses and couches. My guests today are the Director of Welcome to Housing, Chris Olsen, and a volunteer, Shannon Denbow. How are you two doing today?
Great.
Good. Chris, why don't you start off by explaining what Welcome to Housing is?
Well, the easiest way to just talk about it like an analogy. Most people out there, if they're an adult, they remember their first apartment, their first dormitory. You get settled in for the night and there's something you're missing. You might have a whole pantry full of food and you don't have a can opener. You might have a bed but you don't have pillowcases. Basically what we try to do is take donations from the community for bed, bath, and kitchen items and give them back out to people. We originally started helping just the Bangor area homeless shelter, and we've expanded there now to help just about every other shelter and even some people coming through different churches and houses of worship in the area.
How was it created?
Originally it was a 2-year grant program, and last year in 2011 I contacted Dennis Marvel with the shelter. I wanted to do something, as a volunteer project. And he mentioned that the grant was running out and wanted to know if I'd be willing to take it on. And we brought in some volunteers that I've worked with before and some folks like Shannon here today who I've never worked with before and have done a great job in getting the word out.
Shannon, how did you get started with Welcome to Housing?
I can't remember, but I think it was when you did the thing at Martin's.
It was one of the drives that we did at Morton's for Home Basics. We actually handed out things to actually have people buy things in the store and drop them off on the way out.
I think there was snow on the ground.
There
too.
was.
Yeah. So I just went out there with my video camera and was blown away that there were actually lots of people there helping out, lots of people donating, and it's just, who hasn't been in that position when you're moving into a place or you're trying to get your life together, and there's just always something that you need, like you said, whether it's a can opener or a toaster. I hear
Toasters,
you have
we
new
have
toasters.
Toasters we got from a hotel. They're brand new. They're in the box. They're extras.
Yep. And who doesn't have like a ton of stuff kicking around their house? It's like, oh, I'm going to have a yard sale someday, or oh, I'm going to drop that off there, or whatever. You just never get to it. And Chris is great too, because I have actually videotaped you going to somebody's house to pick up a great big truckload of donations. So that's how I started, just utilizing my camera services, I guess, to videotape the happening.
And Shannon's been great too, because she's been out on so many pickups. We're going to try to get her out when we deliver some items. We need to get permission and so forth. Yeah. But eventually we hope to pursue grants, and what better way when you're making your grant application of also having some video to go with it to explain how the program works by people actually seeing it, witnessing it.
How many people would you say Welcome to Housing has helped so far?
I would say we're getting close to 100 people. What we started doing was trying to keep an inventory of all the items that we had donated. And it's impossible because we have so many donations constantly going on. And what we're doing now is something called reverse inventory. And as of last fall, I think we had helped about 40 people, and that was almost a year ago, and it continues to go from there. So the procedure now is a caseworker will come up, they'll have a form to fill out with the person that's there that they're helping, and we actually ask them to list all the things that they're taking, because we're trying to keep records as best we can, because eventually we'll go for a grant or two. And the more information you have, I've worked on grants before, the more information you have, the better chance you'll have. And as of May of this year, we've actually expanded to help other agencies, which is great, because that's more eyes and ears, more people we can help. And what we're trying to do is get them into the mode of volunteering and helping out to build a really large coalition. And it's all a volunteer effort, which just blows me away when people come through, like Shannon and so many of the other people, and like yourself with ETE here at Husson. It's really heartwarming to see that happen.
What are some of your fondest memories, Shannon, of working with Welcome to Housing and helping?
I guess just being up at the, what do you call it, the warehouse, the storage facility. You know, you've just got mountains and mountains of stuff that you got to sort through, right down to sheet sets. You know, are they queen, are they double, whatever, and just like being able to spend a few hours in there with a handful of people and really turn it around and put it into something organized. You know, you guys are definitely blazing a trail up there, and it's all volunteers, right down to people who, you know, have their vehicles and, despite the gas prices, will drive out somewhere and pick up a load of stuff, or, like you said, drop stuff off to people. So.
It's not only heartwarming, it's also a learning experience. I ran into a lady the other day, came up with a caseworker. The reason that she was homeless is she had had a baby, went to the hospital, brought her baby home, and the living situation where she was living was apparently had gotten really bad, so she ended up moving out on her own volition to keep her safe as well as her baby safe. But some simple things that you and I take for granted every day, not just can openers, toothbrushes, shampoo, towels, clean towels, anything like that, people light up like they've won the lottery. And it's just a really good feeling, because you know that if you were in that situation, you'd want somebody there to help you out as well.
Why would you say that Welcome to Housing is important to the community?
There's so many reasons. Number one is the obvious. If we can help people, here's a good example. We had one gentleman that came through the Bangor area homeless shelter, was helped by Penquist. A friend of mine contacted me. She said, this gentleman has served our country. He's got a $20 voucher to Goodwill, and that's it. And I'm like, wow, so we filled in the blanks. If you want to look at a completely monetary side, I sell real estate. I'm a real estate broker. It makes for a better community, because if somebody is not getting desperate, if somebody's getting into an apartment and they have a lot of these things taken care of, the basics, whether it's toilet paper, paper towels, anything like that, they're going to be much more successful at staying where they are, being able to find a job, getting their life back on track. And the thing that blows my mind of all the people I've talked to, of how diverse and how many different reasons there are that people have gone through a shelter. And thank God we live in a day and age that we do, that we have programs like this.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just add that, you know, it really can happen to anybody to be in that situation where you don't have the things that we tend to take for granted every day. And on top of that, like, a lot of people don't even have transportation, you know, just to get out to Walmart to get a cup set or some silverware. It's like, it can be a big problem for a lot of people.
My first delivery was to a gentleman who looked like a young version of Santa Claus. Really nice guy. And his personal belongings were in a little heap, and we put them in my car, and we went up to an apartment, really tiny apartment, his first apartment. And on top of that pile was a really nicely bound college diploma. And I'm thinking, wow, you know, and you want to ask, but you don't ask because it's none of your business, but you never know. Here's somebody who apparently has a really good educational background, and for whatever reason, circumstances came about that he had to start over again, but he had such a good attitude about it. And then when I made a second delivery to him, he was in a larger apartment, gargantuan microwave. He was extremely happy to get that.
Well, and 9 times out of 10, too, those people are just so moved by the whole experience that you could, you know, if you need volunteers, they're right there. You know, it really is like a relationship builder in our community.
And you went on a delivery with me, too, and she's been on deliveries. And the amazing thing is, the best way to get volunteers really hooked into this is to have them go and take something to somebody and see, you know, put a name and a face with the situation.
Who are the sponsors of Welcome to Housing? Like, which outlets have been helping out with you?
Well, we've been having a lot of support. We have an anonymous donor for our largest warehouse. We have two, what they're called BODs over in Brewer Parker K. Bailey. They provide trucks. There have been times when we've emptied out like an older hotel where we had about 40 or 50 beds, and they actually provided trucks. They provide trucks at the drive. We have a lot of the printers like Snowman Printing and Presort Express out in Herman. We did for the Goods for Good drive, we did 5,000 pieces, and they donated that, and that's a lot of money. Shaw's down on Main Street has hosted events, Martin's. There's a lot of different groups here at Husson at the University of Maine. A lot of the civic groups, our banner that we have at every event was donated by Kiwanis. So if people want to get involved, it's a real positive thing. You get hooked into it and you'll enjoy it. And we try to tell people to go onto Facebook if they want to learn more, because as you know from going on the Welcome to Housing site on Facebook, it's just really grown a lot. And eventually, within the next couple of weeks, we're also going to have a website. And that's donated too. We actually had somebody come up to us at the University of Maine at a volunteer fair and said, I run a web design company. We'd like to donate a website to you. And after I picked my jaw off the ground, I'm like, wow, thank you. So just getting the word out there is such a big help.
Can you tell me more about the October microwave drive?
Certainly. As a matter of fact, it's going to be concluding tomorrow being Saturday, which is Make a Difference Day. And my wife, who's been very supportive of this all along, Robin Pinkham, actually went on the Make a Difference Day site, and we're up there. We have no idea if we're in line for any grants, but just to get the word out. But how it happened is, when we originally started working with the Bangor Area Homeless Shelter, we still keep our funds there in an account, but we help all organizations though. But what we try to do is do our events and programs in between when they're doing their big drives and their hike for the homeless. So we're enhancing what they do rather than taking away from it. But we've had, we'll have 3 Fridays and 3 Saturdays where we're collecting stuff. And everything we've done so far has been successful, and we always call it the first annual. We're going to be doing another winter whiteout paper drive to collect toilet paper in February again. And that came about from me talking to somebody else who talked to somebody else who talked to somebody who had a few dollars left, and they said, okay, am I going to buy food or am I going to buy toilet paper? And in our society where we pay millions of dollars to athletes and actors and so forth, to think that somebody out there can't afford a package of toilet paper is just pretty sad. And one of the volunteers, Kevin Mooney, who's a manager over at Shaw's, said, you know, we ought to do something, and that's how the paper drive started.
What sorts of things shouldn't be donated?
Some things that we take all donations, and what we do is we sort through them. But a good example, for instance, we've received cases of wine glasses. A lot of people that we work with are in recovery, or they're getting out of a situation where alcoholism might be involved. So we give those away to the Brewer Kiwanis, for instance. They do a yard sale, and that money goes to charity. If there are larger, we've gotten calls recently about refrigerators, washers, and dryers. And what we recommend to do with those is call Habitat for Humanity's Restore, because they can sell those. They can pick them up and they can sell them, and they can put the money back into building a home for somebody. We're looking for the basics, though. Like I said, kitchen, bed, and bath, pots and pans. And when people want to make a cash donation, they can make it through the Bangor Area Homeless Shelter, designate it for Welcome to Housing. And what we do is we go and purchase things that we're running low on, pots and pans, bath towels, you name it. And it works out really, really well.
What are some of the more unique things that have been donated?
Well, let's see. We recently had a couple of camp toilets. They look like great big thermoses. We made sure to give those away. We've had tiki torches and things like that. One time we had a great big box of about 14 pairs of shoes a friend of mine gave me. I took them over to Goodwill. They were very happy to see them. So rather than being super duper picky, what we do is we'll take stuff and we'll sort it out. We just ask that if people donate something that is not yard sale leftovers that have been outside, because we've gotten those that are covered with grass and mud, you know, as long as they're clean and unbroken. And if there are things that need tightening up, like a piece of furniture, we'll take care of that and get it back out to somebody.
Don't forget that blow dryer from like 1922.
Oh, yes. It's a really old-fashioned blow dryer. It looked like something out of Terminator, and it's all metal and so forth. But it's been a lot of fun, and I know that there are people out there watching today that want to do a community service project, that want to get involved in something. We can give them a lot of good positive publicity. I've done volunteer work since I was a little kid. I used to collect for UNICEF at Halloween. And of all the things I've ever worked on, I've never worked on something where you tell somebody about it and they get it like that. You don't have to do any song and dance. It's like, okay, these people are starting out all over again. They have nothing. Oh, wow, how can I help?
Do you see the need for this increasing?
Unfortunately, probably yes, because there's a lot of different programs. Years and years ago, when there were a lot more people in institutions and so forth, the idea was to mainstream people into the community and, you know, make sure that they had their medications and so forth. So a lot of people that are marginalized are having a tougher time. And I'm going to defer to you because you've actually worked at the shelter and seen some of the situations people are coming from.
Yeah, I am one of those who, you know, just a couple paychecks away from being in that kind of situation. I mean, it can really happen to anybody, but on the good note, there are a lot of services out there, and this just is icing on the cake. You know, it really like helps fill in the cracks and make up for what programs can't do.
And that's one of the nice things we're going to be doing in December. Bangor Savings has already offered to sponsor a workshop out at the Eames Center. What we're going to do is invite all the caseworkers, probably all the local clergy, rabbis and ministers and so forth to come in, because a lot of them help families as well, and educate them about what we do. But also we're going to try to get from them suggestions of how we can do things better, and also get them to put their money where their mouth is as far as volunteering goes. Because, for instance, community health and counseling has, I found out just the other day, about 30 caseworkers that deal with getting people back into a home. I had no idea, so we always have to re-explain it. And there's some things that kind of blow my mind. One caseworker there said, we're so glad that you can help, and we're able to find an apartment. This is a different agency who was helping them find the apartment. But the couple was expecting a baby. And if the baby was born while the woman was in the shelter, she might lose custody temporarily until she was in a more stable home environment. And I've worked for adoptive and foster families of Maine, and I knew that, but I had forgotten about it. So it's like, wow, you know, it's kind of like God tapping on the glass and going, it is important. So if people want to get involved, we'd love to hear from them. There's a lot of creative people out there. If you ever have a chance, people can go on YouTube and see some of the videos. Just type in Welcome to Housing. And it's wonderful to see people come together. And it's a lot of people doing the little things. It's not asking like a small group to do everything. We're spreading it out. So if there's a civic group or anyone out there that wants to do a project, we'll come up with something and make it happen and make it fun. Because we're not only raising money, we're also raising awareness. And the more people know, the more people can help. And if you've got a piece of furniture at your home that your significant other says, we need to get rid of that. You know, we don't need that many couches or whatever. You know, we'd be more than happy to take it off their hands.
And I know for me, like, you know, because I do work at the shelter and stuff, and it's great to see people, you know, get housed and go into an apartment, but it's heartbreaking to know that 9 out of 10, they're probably going to just be sleeping on a blanket at night or whatever. And it's just such a relief to be able to hook them up with Chris and know that their basic needs would probably be taken care of. And a lot of shelters just don't have the storage space for, you know, things like bedding, clothing, all that stuff.
And you've run into some people after the fact that have been helped out, haven't you?
I have.
Which
People with
must be really
babies
cool.
and families and their lives together. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's nice. And I think if more people understood that the stereotypical homeless person isn't stereotypical at all. I think Dennis Marble said at the vigil last winter, he said, you know, there are a lot of people out there that are one paycheck away from sleeping on a relative's couch, sleeping in their car, or being in the woods, you know, or coming to a shelter. And I can't, there are a lot of celebrities, there are a lot of athletes out there that do give back, and that's wonderful. But once in a while you see the Charlie Sheens of the world, you know, spending all kinds of money on frivolous things when there are other people through no fault of their own sometimes. And the nice thing is, too, this is a population of people that are so used to being told no. Can I? No, no, no. And I had this one young man come up, a caseworker, and we got a whole bunch of stuff, and he was looking at furniture. He said, is this furniture spoken for? I said, why? He said, that's a really neat coffee table. I said, well, let's get it for you. I went out and got my tools, and we tightened the legs up. He was happy as a clam. It was great.
There are some groups that do the same thing as you, but they will put them in foreclosed homes. How do you feel about that?
I think that's a wonderful program. They've been talking about that. I know the city of Bangor, about a year and a half ago, was talking about purchasing foreclosed homes, fixing them up, and getting people into them, kind of like Habitat, but already having the home built. Being a real estate agent and having seen a lot of empty homes, because I used to take pictures for a property management company, an empty home is no good to anybody because things happen when no one's there, and people need a roof over their head. And there's so many different things when people say, oh, it could never happen to me, or it's their fault. I had a gentleman I ran into who had a really negative attitude towards the homeless. And it's like, you have to have some empathy and understanding that, you try to be in control of your life, but sometimes stuff happens and you never know when to expect it. So
Yeah, and it's programs like this that really help people keep their dignity, I mean, people just really deserve that. You cannot put a stereotype on homelessness. You just absolutely cannot in this economy. I mean, I've seen pictures of, people in the shelter of their past. Some people, this one guy in particular had a picture of himself with Connie Chung.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
Wow.
actually I think it was taken at the Hudson campus. So you never know, who's going to be in that situation. And at this point, it doesn't matter. I mean, we live in a world where it's not like there isn't enough to go around. There is enough to go around, and Chris is really doing a great job bringing it all together.
Having volunteers
Yeah.
like Shannon and everybody else.
Yeah.
When I worked at Hope House, I was helping a gentleman with his resume. And it was amazing. This guy was in computers long before Apple or anybody, and he knew programming, and he had an addiction. He was an alcoholic. But this gentleman was absolutely brilliant, but just couldn't handle the addiction, and he tried to get his life back together. And it's things like that. I have my late grandfather was a rear admiral in World War II, and I found out in my teen years that he was a high-functioning alcoholic. But he was a very successful rear admiral during World War II. I mean, you never know. Everyone's different. So, but there's a lot of ways people can get involved, and I know that, for instance, the Bangor Area Homeless Shelter started with the support from the church, and that got that off the ground quite a few years ago. I think it's a little over 25 years now that the Bangor Shelter's been around. And there's a lot of other nonprofits. Thea Day is a great person to do a shout out to. She's the social services director at the Salvation Army. So a lot of times I'll get a call from somebody who's in a desperate situation. And the procedures, we try to have them call an intermediary, whether it's a caseworker or clergy, so that we know we're not taking people out of line. In other words, if somebody's been waiting for a long time, they get first come, first serve. But she's done a lot.
Do you think that there's a long-term solution to this?
It's hard to tell, because what we're doing right now is we're working on the symptom. We're not working on the cause. Hopefully the economy will eventually get back on track. And the thing that I think is wonderful about this day and age is the compassion of people. One of the former presidents years ago, with one of the Points of Light Foundation, I love the quote. He said that there are more people than there are problems, and things will get done, and it's very true. There's a lot of ways people can help if they just stop and think and open their heart and put themselves in the shoes of somebody else. It's like you and I were talking the other day when it's really cold out and I'm playing with my snowblower and thinking, this is fun, but I get to go back into a warm house. I think, my God, what, behind Hope House is a place called The Pines where people are camping out, and they don't have all the fancy yellow bean camping gear. They're out there because they're too paranoid to go into a shelter. Whether it's a mental illness or an addiction, it's a scary thing.
What do you think the biggest success story from Welcome to Housing would be? From you, Shannon, and then Chris.
Oh, I actually have no idea. It's all pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know if you've seen their storage facilities at
Yes.
all. It's pretty impressive. I've seen it when it was almost completely empty.
I remember when it was
I
empty
think.
and there was a broken down forklift and so forth. But I think one of the best successes I've seen is a gentleman that we helped, and he went to work for the shelter for a short time, and he's back on his feet. He's a smart guy. And it was just really cool to see somebody turn around and get back on track. Years ago, when I did a fundraiser for the shelter, we raised over $7,000, and one of the things that we put in the ask letter was a lot of people hear the thing about people being put on buses and being dropped off, in Bangor because other cities have had enough of them. That's not an urban legend. That happens. But rather than looking at Bangor as the end of the line, look at it as a new start. The shelter is a good example where they work cooperatively with about 30 other agencies. For instance, St. Joseph Hospital does the laundry for all their sheets and so forth. That's all donated. They work with a lot of other agencies. Rather than trying to get more and more money to do all these different things and not necessarily do a good job with it, they delegate or triage out to people and other agencies that can help. So when somebody comes in and needs help, there's a whole lineup of people. Salvation Army has a great resource list which keeps growing I carry one with me all the time because a lot of times I get a call and somebody's been shuffled around and it's like, okay, you have something to write with? Yes. Okay, I'm going to give you 5 or 6 numbers and you can go from there.
These are all private agencies. Have you ever been helped by government agencies, or do you see government agencies helping?
You know, in all honesty, I think the closest thing we've come to government is the local municipalities and so forth. I think eventually they're going to learn about us. I know that the Brewer Housing Authority called us up out of the blue. That's why we're looking forward to doing an educational public meeting sort of thing in December, because a lot of people assume we're an agency. There's a furniture bank in southern Maine, and on their website it specifically says if you are getting a piece of furniture, you're going to wait a couple of weeks. We've been really fortunate with people like Lance and Kevin and DJ and a lot of other people to be able to get something out same day, next day, or something like that. But we really do need help. We're doing well, but we could do even better if we had more people behind us.
And we're almost out of time, but for my last question, I'd like to ask, if someone's watching this show right now and they think, hey, I want to help out, how can someone help out and volunteer?
Easiest thing to do is, if they're on Facebook, is go to Welcome to Housing Bangor, Maine. And if they're not on Facebook, they can give me a call. I'm very free with my cell number. It's area code 207-745-1287. Call or text or whatever. And if you'd like to get involved, we'd love to have you involved.
And what motivated each of you to do this project?
I'll let you go first.
Yeah, it's just seeing, like he said, people in need, you know, just the basics. And I know that we can get together and cover the basics at least.
Yeah. I saw a need out there too, and years ago I took off from school. I ended up in Boston really late, and I ended up staying in a shelter in Boston, and instead of being scared by it, I'm like, wow, really lucky to live in a day and age where we have something like this. And before I went out to my aunt and uncle's, but I contacted Dennis. I've always loved what the shelter does. And one of the things that I learned when I worked at Hope House is apparently a lot of the organizations up here that help people in need, we apparently get along really well and work really well together. And that's not always the case in other parts of the country.
What kind of items do you think people should be donating?
Anything from kitchen items. Can openers are one that we always joke about, but we always need them. If somebody's getting a newer microwave and they have one that still works, to dispose of a microwave, even if it's working, is really almost impossible, and we can get them, we can use them, we'll clean them up. Things like bath towels. Just take a day when you get up in the morning until you go to bed at night and think of all the different items you use, whether it's a glass or a plate or anything, and think, okay, what if I didn't have that? You know, and that's what it really boils down to. And when people stop and think about it, it's like, wow. You know, a lot of things we take for granted.
What would you say would be the best thing to donate?
Can openers. Just because there have been a lot of people who get housed and come in and like, oh, I wish I had a can opener, things like that. Yeah. Clocks, alarm clocks.
Mm-hmm. And the fun thing is, too, a lot of times when people ask for something, we don't have it, and the next day we get it. I had a lady ask for a futon, and she said, when are you going to get some in? I wanted to say, we're not a furniture store. But the next day I went up to the Old Town Warehouse, and Lance had rounded up 2 futons. I'm like, wow, that's just strange. And this has happened several times, where somebody needs a vacuum, and all of a sudden there's a vacuum up there. So it's a program I think that's really meant to be.
And do you think you could give out your phone number?
Certainly. Yeah, it's area code 207-745-1287.
All right, well, that's all the time that we have for this program. I want to thank Chris and Shannon so much for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
as I mentioned at the top of the show, you can watch a rebroadcast of this program on Channel 5 on Husson NESCOM campus and online at nescom.tv. This program is produced by the students and faculty of the New England School of Communications. Their names will follow. I'm Nikky Raney. Thanks for being with us, and we'll look forward to you next time.
So I won't pick my nose right here.
No.